Halfway House is still a dead space. Nothing's happening there. And so, as you know, we were in Senate Room, and well, that's a difficult venue. It's very hierarchical. We felt this is much better. It's a much more intimate space, and the crowds are packing in, which is fantastic. So welcome to this, the second in our series for this semester, and our series it's a series of launching our working papers. Now, I'm really delighted to be able to introduce Sonwabile Mnwana, our speaker for the morning. He's a SWOP researcher who has been doing extensive and deep research in the Platinum Belt, in the communities that he's going to talk about today, and in the archives. And in that way, he demonstrates really, and his presentation is going to demonstrate the kind of value of what we call slow social science or slow sociology. In other words, really in-depth research that takes place over some period of time, and which then is able to analyze, open up real complexities and deep insights into the world in which we live. So, this morning Sonwabile will be talking. This is the research report that we're launching. We did not make it available before the talk because you know that, all of you bunch, being intellectuals, will plunge into the text and not listen to the talk. But you will get your copies at the end of this with your complimentary breakfast, courtesy of FES. But it's a fantastic report, co-authored by Sonwabile and Gavin Capps here on my far right. It's got lovely pictures from the area that will give you some sense of what's going on there, and really fascinating narrative. So it's really great that Sonwabile is going to be presenting this. I do want to also, firstly to say that one of the elements of slow sociology is that research is a collective effort. It involves many people. And continue this research over the next few years is really a kind of strategic partnership in which they are prepared to put the resources in to deep research in the belief that it's this kind of research that provides the insights on which social policy and ultimately social justice can be struggled for. So I really want to thank Ford, for making this all possible. So I don't want to say any more than that. Simply to hand over to Sonwabile, who is going to blow your socks off with today's talk.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm not sure I'm going to blow your socks off, as Carl said. I'm just an academic, not a politician. I always envy politicians. Every time they stand in front of the crowd, they always shout one word. What is that word? Excellent, Amanda. And a politician will shout that term one time, two, and the third time the crowd will be jumping up and down, urinating and dancing, and willing to receive the talk. So I think we academics sometimes don't get that right. I don't know how the politicians manage to get that right. I mean, we can have 30 students in the class, and 15 of them get to sleep before you finish 20 minutes of your talk. But politicians are able to keep thousands of people enthralled and thrilled with their talks. So, by the way, Carl has mentioned that research is a collective effort. Indeed, this work is a collective effort. I would like to acknowledge, although they are not here, I know that there are people from the community where we've conducted the study in the Bakgatla-ba-Kgafela Tribal Authority area, and we would like to convey our thanks to them and put that on record, and to many people who have collaborated in this study, and other people that we cannot mention by name, but I will highlight the team that I've been working with, Dr. Gavin Capps, and some of our interns, Ms. Stanley Malindi, Gregory Makaulana, and Johannes Mashia. Sorry, I forgot that name. So I think these are the people who have helped us to work, together as a team. And I must mention also, we were joined later on in 2013 by a guy called Popopo Motla. So these are the people who were working with the team when we were walking up and down the Platinum Belt collecting this study. Now, I just want to highlight, first of all, few processes that we have observed, and the processes that we think that help us to think about what is going on and the new rural struggles in the Platinum Belt. The first process that I would like to mention is the shift of platinum mining focus. Over the past 20 years, we have seen that mining capital is increasingly moving to the impoverished rural areas which used to fall under the former Bantustan areas. And secondly, in tandem with that, we've also seen what some people have called retribalization, where states have passed a series of legislation which increases tremendously the power of tribal authorities in these areas. And that has resulted in what we observe as a significant control of tribal authorities or the chiefs over communal property. Right. And this is what we argue generate considerable resistance in these tribal authority areas. And, and the map on your right, as you may see, if you look at that map, you will notice that there, let me start with the smallest one. That is the Bakgatla Tribal Authority in South Africa, and that is where the Bakgatla Tribal Authority is located in Northwest, in the Bojanala district municipality. And then these are the villages of the Bakgatla Tribal Authority area. You may notice that some of you who may be part of the middle class and maybe have enjoyed a bit of leisure class, that is the Pilanesberg Game Park. Maybe they know that, maybe people know that. So these are the impoverished rural areas that are surrounding the area around the Pilanesberg Game Park and around the Pilanesberg Mountains. And it has become increasingly the main focus of platinum mining expansion. I mean, one of the tribal authorities where platinum mine expand tremendously over the past few years. Now, I want to analyze briefly to draw some thoughts on the forms that the resistance take in these areas. One cannot undermine the role of power and how power is organized to crush resistance. When we look at how the state at the national level has passed a series of legislation which tremendously empowers the chief of the Traditional Leadership and Frameworks Act, the Northwest Framework Act of 2005. These are the pieces of legislation that empowers the chief through custom. And chiefs have become not only the enforcers of custom, but also they define custom, even in relation to rural property as well, or the communal property, because most of these areas where these mines are operating are communal properties. As you could see, perhaps in that, I hope that is clear, the billboard. And so that placard, I took that picture during a demonstration of the Bakgatla residents. This happened outside the Pretoria High Court. Okay, sure. Thanks, Carl. So I hope you can see that one, huh? This happened, I took that picture during one of the court hearings in Pretoria. People were demonstrating outside. But it is clear that people perhaps understand these things more than we do. They are pointing to the Premier of Northwest that is protecting a tribal authority, that they can understand the levels of power and how power operates and how power prohibits their rights and how power crushes rural resistance. I'll move forward quickly. Now, this is how the chiefs articulate. I've taken that statement from a statement made by Chief Sonwabile Mnwana of the Bakgatla-ba-Kgafela Tribal Authority. He articulates the relationship between the mine and the local communities. And he argues that the local community with a strong leadership is an asset to a mining company, providing easy access to labor and lowering the cost And companies can approach communities in a structured way. It's a win-win situation for everyone. So you can see how power then, that I argue, I mean, drawn of course from Mnwana, that it is institutionalized. The post-apartheid state has institutionalized rural power. For some reason, I mean, for obvious reason, because the tribal institution itself, which defined custom, control a tremendous amount of power, which now the mines can only enter through the chiefs, not thousands, hundreds of thousands of impoverished rural residents who have used these lands for time immemorial, for plowing and grazing. Now you could see also how power operates at a very local level, very practical. This is the billboard outside the platinum mine, one of the quick, rapidly expanding operations, a huge open pit, which is expanding into rural people's former plowing fields, massively. And when you walk outside, the villagers are met with that billboard. No recruitment done in such. For all recruitment purposes queries, for all recruitment queries, please contact your local tribal or traditional council. There, at the local level, we can see how power plays a role between the mind. Now, what is important there? We're trying to trace these rural struggles, looking at how they are connected to distinct political and land histories of that region. And to construct such histories, it cannot be just an exercise of ethnographic method, although we have used extensively, the interview method. But archival research was also useful, and oral histories. But I want to highlight something about archival research that I think all serious historians will know. Archives throughout, especially in the post-colonial Africa, cannot be trusted solely as the main source from which we can derive knowledge. Because we know they were written by colonialists who knew very little about African indigenous systems, who interpreted African indigenous systems in a way that empowers the chiefs, that the chief is a custodian of the land, which pre-colonial history, we know during pre-colonial history, that thing never ever happened. People, of course, we could say that land allocation was based on belonging to a certain unit, political unit. It could be a tribe, it could be a clan group, whatever. But afterwards, no power or authority regulated on how families use land. People would inherit land without consulting the chief that I'm inheriting land from my father. But colonialists did not understand it, and they only saw land as property of the chief. So I'll quickly move from there. So that's why oral histories with the elders, who had tremendous knowledge about the history of their land and how the land was purchased. I'm going to come to that point of purchasing of land, which is something unique about the former Western Transvaal region. Right. We selected 3 villages. The Luseklang village, Mutlabe, and Sifikile villages. All these villages are located very close to mining operations. And all these villages have got disputes about the mineral-rich land on which platinum mining occurs. Now, there's a fundamental feature, 2 fundamental features, which cuts across all these villages. One is that claims to land are very much linked to the distinctive history of the former Transvaal, where Africans in the late 1800s and in the first quarter of the 20th century purchased land as groups. As a result, that was after colonial conquest, when all their land was taken. So they came together as groups and purchased land. But because colonial state would not allow them to register names in their names, so the lands were registered, these were demarcated farms, right? These farms were registered under the name of chiefs that were recognized by the colonial state. That is a fundamental feature that described and that defined the struggles in the Northwest, particularly within the Rustenburg region. Right. And second, land claiming groups. There's another fundamental feature about that land claiming groups, particularly within the very specific the Bakgatla history. What happened after colonial conquest? It is clear, although it's not well recorded in history, that I'm just taking the history from the 1850s now, after the death of Hosi Pilani, from whom the ruling lineage of Bakgatla comes from. He had about 13 houses. It is clear that different sons of Pilani led smaller groups of Bakgatla all over Pilani State. Remember, these were landless Africans who resided as labor tenants on white-owned farms. So the result of that, when they mobilized resources, whether it was cattle, sorghum, whatever that they used to purchase land, they would approach a chief, and not every chief could be approached for purchasing of land and register land. So they were forced to approach recognized chiefs to register their land. So that is why most of the farms that are claimed by the groups, you find that they claim that this land was bought as private property, and we could not get the title deeds written in their name because the state did not recognize the group of African purchasers who bought the land. So that is one fundamental feature, and it is clear, when it's in the village of Mr. Klein, this is what happened. This is a group that was led by one of the sons of from the third house, Shomangani, who stayed at a place called Boipitigo. Do you know where Boipitigo is? Boipitigo is, I've said use that term quite often, of course with a considerable level of resistance, is where the Sun City is today, Sun City Game Resort. That is the Boipitigo where Shomangani and his group stayed and mobilized his resources to purchase the farm called Broodfordane, where there is a tank village is standing today. And then they move on in the late 1880s to that particular land. And when they were there, they found out that it was not sufficient to plow, and they bought a farm called Bergespreet, a very agricultural productive farm, on which now, if you turn to page 7 of that report, you will find that from the map we put there, you find out that Finance Bakgatla is increasingly moving into that area, and it is clear that there are demarcated agricultural lands that is there. And this is the farm that is now being increasingly reduced because of the activities of a huge open pit by the Pilanis mine. And this group uses the same history that I've highlighted before to argue that this land should not be, the mining revenues that the chief receives on behalf of the community on this land should not be received by the chief, and the relationship should not be mediated by Chief Pilan. It should be mediated between them and the mines, because they are the rightful owners. They are the descendants of the former land buyers or the group of land buyers. Of course, most of these battles do end up in court. And it is interesting, we have highlighted this elsewhere, how the courts use the colonial custom, particularly the apartheid custom, version of custom, which says local people cannot gather without the permission of a chief. So if these people want meeting, I mean many of you will be aware if they have been following this cycle. I'm not going to go. Some of these have gone up to the Constitutional Court. So local people cannot gather without the permission of a chief, and the chief would issue interdicts, and the court will keep those interdicts against the people, and people will be arrested for meeting. And in one of the cases, as I will see, some of the people lost their land, I mean, the court case on the basis that land is a private property of the tribe. I'm sorry, land belongs to the chief. He is the custodian, so they have no right as a group to constitute themselves as a land claiming group. But I'll come to that later on. So, right, but what I would like to say as well, that most of the buyers were constituted as clans. And this is creating tensions in the current struggles, because, as you know, as elsewhere, Africans would join clans, Africans from outside would join clans. And those Africans who came in were allocated land in some of these farms. And now that the farm is is now a target of mining capital and there are revenues in there, there's a struggle on how those revenues will be distributed between those who are the descendants of the people who purchased, and those who joined, who are the descendants of the people who joined after the land was purchased. But I'm not going to go into details. We have taken those struggles in here. Now, I'm going to go about another village, the village of Mutlabe. Same history again. The land the buying group was constituted. These were the groups that, this is the group that was one of the sons of Kosifilan, from the 13th house, so from the 11th house. So, by the name of Kautwai. Now they moved into the farm reservoir in 1932 after they were purchased, in the same fashion, in the same way that I've described earlier. But there's one thing that is unique about this land claim. It is very much linked to a claim over chieftaincy. And it has started way back in the 1980s, when different descendants of Kautwai have claimed independence of Mutlabe from the entire Bakgatla village. So even some of it has happened, and the recent happened in 2013. The Constitutional Court ruled in favor of one of Bakgatla's descendants by the name of Mutipelani, who was interdicted by the chief for gathering without his permission. And the Constitutional Court dismissed those interdicts. And that case set a precedent that people could meet. And then this is an ongoing dispute. It is still going, and the Bakgatla are still claiming their right to, their chieftains. And they claim that they were, although they are Bakgatla, but they are Bakgatla, they were an independent and therefore the revenues that come from the Bakgatla should also be distributed to them. So one of the issues I want to highlight as well is that there is division, especially around the youth, because the village is very marginalized. And there's no water, all services are very poor. The youth in the village argue that they want jobs.